Welcome to the Pzaz Filmmaker interview series. At Pzaz, we've made it our mission to help film and video makers succeed. In this series, we'll be speaking to interesting people from across the film industry. We'll gain insight into their journeys to help share their lessons with our audience.
Tejas is a filmmaker who's been working on his feature-length project with his co-director for a whopping 10 years. Watch or listen on to find out exactly why it's taken so long and the sheer effort that's gone into making the film. So, Stephen, thanks so much for joining us today. It's absolutely great to see you. I know you've just told me off camera that you're a little ill today, but thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This is interesting and exciting. This is the first time I've ever done like a interview with anyone.
Yeah. It's a great way to just shout about stuff you've been working on. Also, this series is really about finding out what filmmakers like yourself, people in the film industry, how they got into it and why they love it so much. And that actually leads me on to my first question. You know, what are your earliest memories of filmmaking?
Well, certainly, the passion came from just being with my dad, and that was one of the few things we would do together. We would go to the movie and then sneak into other movies at the theater. So it just always kind of I've had that deep relationship with film, and then just growing up watching movies and, that being one of the main sources of media that I consume would just be films. And, it just kind of built upon itself. And then I actually live in California. So, filmmaking's never that far away from us over here.
No, that's fantastic. And it's great to hear that, that it was kind of a bond that you had with your dad. Would you say that was your main way of bonding with him? It was going to the movies and seeing the latest picture, or?
Yeah, I would say that definitely was. And then also just with my other family members, film always was a big part of their lives, especially like Star Wars, and Indiana Jones. So those were always things that we could all bond over, and just something we could talk about, especially with my older cousins.
No, that's lovely. And just to give a little bit more clarity on that, how what sort of age were you when you were first introduced to filmmaking? Was it a really quite early age? Was it some really early films that you watched when you were young and that just got you into it straight away?
Yeah, I would have to say it definitely was as early as I can remember. I mean, for us, that was one of the main family activities we would get to do, just something we could afford. So it was just, let's go to the video store, rent a movie, and make it a family night that way. So yeah, as early as I can remember, and then just being a little kid, taking the VHS off the shelf and just watching my favorite movie over and over. I was one of those kids growing up. So yeah, it's just always been there for me, and it's always just been a fun thing to delve into, with filmmaking and just how expansive filmmaking is. I mean, if there's anything you love to do, you can probably find a job on a film set doing that. It's just so expansive in that way.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned watching your favorite film over and over again. What were those? Was it one film, or was it a variety of films that you liked watching on repeat? Are there any big names in there?
Oh, I mean, I was a kid, so it changed from month to month, and I would watch these movies like 10, 20, 100 times. Definitely Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Jurassic Park, Star Wars, A New Hope and Return of the Jedi were the big ones for me. And even Babe. I don't know if you know the movie Babe, but I love that film. I always talk about it, tell everyone how great it still is. So, I would just watch, who knows, just some random. I used to watch Highlander all the time. I would watch that over and over on repeat, stuff like that. So.
Yeah, no, I know, Babe. It's a great film. It's weird looking at, watching it back. But yeah, no, I totally hear you with the Star Wars and Jurassic Park. That one for me. That was I wasn't even born when it came out, but I've watched it back and multiple times. Like, it's one of my favorite films, and it's actually genuinely terrifying. Like, I like it.
Oh yeah,
so scary when it first came out.
Yeah. I remember seeing it in theater, and that scene where the car stopped right in front of the T-Rex pen, and that whole scene. And man, that's still one of my favorite scenes in cinema. And I love that scene because I watch it or when I used to watch it all the time, I would just become so engrossed by the film that once you see that goat being eaten by the T-Rex, most of that segment, there's actually no music. At some point, the music just stops and you just hear the ambient sound of what's happening within the scene with the rain falling, the sound of mud and all of that. And then at some point, also within that scene, the music comes back on. So that always just stood out to me, just how powerful filmmaking could be, because, that's one of the great scores in films is Jurassic Park. And all of a sudden, John Williams' score just cuts out and you're just completely in the moment of this scene with the T-Rex and you're just so engrossed. I mean, it's a brilliant, brilliant part of the film.
Yeah, it's amazing when a film doesn't have to rely on the soundtrack. I've noticed more and more, actually, now that you mention it, there is not just film, but also TV shows, it feels like always a low level of music playing behind. I don't know if it's a pacing thing, people's attention spans have dropped in the social media age. But yeah, no, that's absolutely spot on. And so was it these films, watching them from a young, early age, was it that inspired you to pursue a career in filmmaking, or were there other elements in there?
Yeah, I would definitely say that inspired just the love and appreciation for it. But really, it wasn't until my friend Tom, he wanted to do and that's my co-director who I mentioned on the film we're working on. And he wanted to do a film. So I was like, hey, man, let's just do a film. Let's make it real. Let's try a real honest attempt at filmmaking. Because, you're asking like, what's my angle from this? I'm definitely from the outside looking in. We're trying to break in. We're nobodies in this, trying to make a film, but technology has allowed us the privilege. And we just decided to give it an honest attempt. And within film, it's just so deep as far as, learning how to set up the camera or learning how to do gaff or grip work or, doing audio, and then learning about slating and even what a script edit or a script supervisor is and stuff like that. So, it's just this deep, rich world that I kind of just delved into more and more as we're trying to make this film like a real film. And yeah, I mean, we've been working on our film now for almost 10 years. We're finally wrapping it up. It's taken that long because we just self-funded and stuck with it. And we've done like other shorts and we have some other ideas for feature coming up. But, just deciding to take that plunge with him, and also just being at my day job and just being tired working there. I've been working where I work now for almost 20 years now. And it's getting to a point where, I want to see a change of pace. I mostly focus on photography. So that's where I felt confident enough to get into film, because then I felt like I could do the cinematography. So yeah, it just kind of everything lined up at the right time. And this just seemed like a great space to play in. And, storytelling, that's what it's all about. That's what it is ultimately. And it's just wonderful to tell some stories that you enjoy and, hopefully it can entertain people for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting because you touched on there the fact that you're maybe originally or had the most experience in photography, and then so you felt that confidence moving into cinematography. How would you describe your role on your projects? Are you top level directing? I know you said you've got someone that you work with. How do your roles balance each other out? What's your favorite sort of main focus?
Yeah, well, I would say anytime you're working, because the way I describe it, I always say to my buddy, we're entry-level filmmakers. So whenever you're coming at it from that level, you're doing everything. You're doing whatever needs to be done in order to get the film made. So, I mean, that goes from acting in it, because I think we were extras. And then for me personally on that film, wrote, produced, directed, did some of the lighting. Didn't mean to, but ended up doing the cinematography for it because I didn't want to be overwhelmed by that. I just wanted to focus on directing. But we did that. PA work. I mean, just anything that's needed, we've done. And in fact, even going into post-production, we ran into a lot of hurdles. And we finally hit our first enormous obstacle with editing. And we just so happened, that's where most of our time was sunk. We just so happened to edit our own film. So now we're also editors on that. We're trying to get away from it for music, coloring, and VFX because we're not good at that. But, I mean, you're going to do everything. And that's also one of the good things about it, especially starting out. I mean, people always say do short films first because that's a good way to sink your teeth into it and see how you feel about it. Obviously, it's cheaper, quicker. But the nice thing from this perspective, or from this level that we're coming at it from, is we get to do a little bit of everything and just see what really stands out to us and what we really enjoy. Like I've discovered a passion for audio that wasn't there before. And, I kind of enjoy editing. I hate it, but I kind of enjoy it. It's a love-hate thing. So yeah, just doing a little bit of everything on the film.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's quite a common story we hear from people like yourself who we're interviewing. It's very much an all hands on deck. Whatever needs to be done is going to get done by us, basically. So on the flip side of that, have you ever received any information or any advice within creating films at any level or in any role where you think that's poor advice? It's something that you wouldn't do, or is there, regardless of advice, is there anything that you wouldn't do that maybe others do? Is there anything you'd avoid?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest pitfalls for someone who doesn't have any idea and they're just coming at it from a completely fresh perspective, essentially, is that you're going to want to go to the internet, right? And you're going to go to like Reddit. YouTube was a big one for myself. And really just delving into, what do they call it? YouTube University, right? Where people just learn how to do stuff on there. And essentially that taught me a lot about filmmaking. But, part of the problem with not knowing anything is that you also don't know the bad information. You're just ingesting all the information that's coming your way and just taking it at face value. You're taking it to be true because you're not even really shooting necessarily at that point. So that's probably the biggest issue, is just figuring out how to sort through the good information and the bad information. I think one of the best things people could do is, out here, go to a community college, take some filmmaking classes and just learn from an instructor that way. And then probably from there, you can then branch out to YouTube and whatnot. But at least you'll have a better compass to kind of guide you through all of that information.
And so do you think that might be all that's needed, or in an ideal world, would you literally go to film school and study it for years? Is there would you say there's a massive benefit to that, or people can get by on that kind of lower level, cheaper, less time? Can people get by on that?
Well, I definitely can't really speak to that too much because I didn't go to film school. I learned through YouTube and just kind of what I've grown up with film. I mean, a lot of the filmmakers always talk about reading, and reading is very important when you're trying to do your film, but also so is simply watching movies and just seeing how the pacing is, how the lighting is, the cinematography. So, those were the enormous resources. Obviously, reading any books I could get my hands on and scripts as well. But we were able to do it. I think we did okay with our film. We have a bunch of contemporaries in our area that we've talked to, and that, they've shown us their work that they've done. Of course, they did theirs way faster. And they've gone to film school. And, some of them, like, they definitely have some areas of expertise where it's like, your school really helped you learn how to light this properly, or how to do the sound mixing a lot better, or your cinematography. And there are those elements. I think you could get shortcutted definitely by going through school. And then, of course, whoever it sets you up with. But just as easily, I mean, you could skip school and just make a film. I mean, again, like I said earlier, it's about storytelling. So if you know how to tell a good story, that's really all you need. That's the biggest thing with films. And unfortunately, you're not seeing that, where the story is simply the top priority, but that's really all you need to make something worth watching.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And, we'll touch more on this large project that you've been doing. It's taken you and 10 years to be create it. But you mentioned that you've done a couple of other shorts, and I'm sure there's been a few other projects in there as well. And so my question around those projects is, what have you found works best when you market your film projects? Is it a usage of social media? Do you rely on family and friends? What's your angle?
Yeah. Well, right now, currently, we're definitely in the middle of doing all of that for our feature film. So when we did this film, we shot it and we knew like, yeah, we have a snowball's chance in hell with this thing. I mean, we're being a little realistic. So alongside it, we also shot a documentary that could accompany the film. Like, let's say the film's total garbage. Well, maybe we could use this documentary and be like, hey, look at these two delusional filmmakers attempting the impossible. So that was part of the marketing we want to do attached to the film to get people interested. Be like, look, it's just not the solitary thing. It also has this documentary attached to it. And then the other thing that we've since done, and we've been doing for a few years now, is we actually have a podcast. And at first, the podcast was centered around teaching other filmmakers like ourselves how to make films and not run into the issues we ran into. For instance, I mentioned script supervisor, and you had asked, learn what a script supervisor is and get them on your set. So we did a podcast like that, but then we ran into an issue where we realized we didn't know a whole lot about filmmaking, and maybe some of our advice was a little counterintuitive for people. So it's kind of just turned into this journey of this process we're going through in real time. So we're hoping that can be a part of the marketing, but honestly, yeah, I mean, you got to really just learn social media, I think, and you have to learn how to utilize it correctly, because I've been looking at a lot of short films and feature films that people at our level are making, and it's really not a return of profit. And at the end of the day, filmmaking is a business, and the only way you're going to keep doing this is if you get money on the return. So a lot of people who actually know how to use social media, they're able to organize events like where people can go watch the movie, they sell merchandise and get the word out that way and turn it into a successful little project. I can't say we figured out a good way to enter the marketing world. We're still kind of figuring that out. We're still kind of building it, to say. I know we got emails from different companies where they're like, hey, give us X amount of money and we'll market your film for you. And we'll take care of it and submit it off to festivals and all of that. So we've kind of considered that, but also we feel like, well, maybe that's just a way for people to get money, and it's something we easily could have done, So I think our main strategy right now, what we're trying to do is enter the festival market. So we're aiming for the big festivals, see if we get anything there. And then along the way, we're probably going to do the smaller festivals, maybe try to build up some momentum that way. And then in the next year, try for those festivals again and see the festivals who don't care about premiere status, and see if that could generate us some momentum, and then hopefully really focus on marketing and utilizing social media.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a fantastic idea. I think social media is a great tool, but having those festivals, it's such a great way to have another option, let's say.
Yeah.
So going right back to the beginning, if you were starting over in filmmaking, is there anything you'd do differently, or are you entirely happy with the journey that you've had? Is there anything that you chop and change?
Yes and no. I mean, I don't think I would want to do a feature film right off the bat again. I think that was definitely a mistake. But also, if we didn't do that, I don't know if we ever would have done an actual feature. I think we would have just done a series of different shorts, maybe thrown them into an anthology and then let that be that. So it's kind of hard to say. I would definitely recommend for anyone, and if I could have done it myself, just talk to someone who's been in film school or who does this professionally. Get them on your side, maybe as a producer, just someone you can consult with and see what you really need to have on set. Like, there are some things that are necessities. Like, I would say a script supervisor really is a necessity. Doing your data wrangling and really organizing that, we did it. That's a lifesaver too, getting that data really well organized. So stuff like that, probably having post-production ahead of time figured out, that's important. But yeah, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say because I am happy with where we're at now. I mean, granted, it's taken us 10 years and we're like, I don't know, probably collectively 100,000 in the hole from working on this film. But, it's been a great journey, a great thing to bond over. And, it's given me opportunity. Look at right now, I'm here talking to you where without it, this never would have happened.
No, definitely. That's such a good positive way of looking at it. And especially you say you spend so much of your own money on it, and
Yeah.
that's a great way to look at it. And so you've mentioned the project that you've been working on for over 10 years quite a few times throughout the interview. So let's not, wait any longer. What could you tell us about the project? What's it about? Is it taking so long? Go for it.
God. Well, once I tell you the title, you'll start to understand real quick. The film is actually titled Dickhead. And uh, I promise it makes complete sense within the scope of the story. We had other working titles. Um, and of course, if anyone wanted to purchase it, we would definitely change the title if they want. But yeah, that was always the title going in. And essentially, well, the way I like describing it to my buddy, my co-director, Tom, is that it's like what happens if Michael Myers were to meet an evil, even greater evil than himself? What happens to Michael Myers when he meets Satan, kind of. So it kind of delves into that where we have a very bad looking Michael Myers-esque character who meets an even greater unstoppable force than him. And we follow this girl named Jennifer on her day as she's being stalked by the Michael Myers killer. And he's, of course, killing all her friends around her until they meet. And, Michael, what do I call him? I call him Q-tip because for the mask, we just wrapped gauze around his face and put blood on it. So, from afar, it looks like a Q-tip or a one of those crash test dummies. It's funny. I mean, this is obviously like a comedy horror film. Okay, let me preface that real quick.
Bit of a cabin in the woods.
Yeah, yeah. Except, I mean, we're poking way more fun at ourselves because we know where we're coming from and the limits of our film, and so that's what it's about. It's just your simple slasher film. We try to add some more deeper elements. I think any beginning filmmaker is always going to try to do their Tarantino moment, so we try to do our little Tarantino moment in the film. It came out awful, so we had to cut as much of that as humanly possible. Every filmmaker needs their oneer. That came out awful, so we try to cut that out as much as possible. And then any horror filmmaker always wants to have good gore, and we don't have any of that. It's more like a giallo, just a little bit more, suggestive than it is. Well, I guess some of the giallos are more graphic, but it's definitely more suggestive than it is graphic. But that was part of the big thing we did too within the film is we just worked within our means. That was a huge element to writing the story. We didn't want to do like a space adventure because we wouldn't know how to create a good looking spaceship set. But we had houses, we had toilet paper for the mask. Just throw it on someone. There you go. You got your killer, and as long as you have an actor, you got your protagonist. So yeah, that's what we've been working on. That's why it's taken 10 years. Trying to get someone involved on a project called Dickhead isn't exactly the easiest.
No, it's a good name. And hey, who knows? Like all the time Jamie Lee Curtis is still working. You might be in for a sequel.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's gonna love to see that script hit her desk.
Yeah, definitely.
Dickhead too.
Yeah. No,
They were in better.
yeah, to be fair, I'm a huge horror buff myself, so it does sound like a really interesting project. I absolutely love to see it. And
Oh, we'll definitely show it to you if you want.
yeah, definitely. No, it'd be fantastic. And so what's been your primary role in the project? How have you balanced it with your co-director? Like what's your stance?
Yeah, that's a good question. Me and him are just best of friends, and we've been friends for a long time. I mean, that's why I decided to do this endeavor with him. It was like, dude, you love filmmaking, let's just do it. And we did it. We really did it. And And so I think him and I just kind of have a natural language on how to work together as co-directors. He knows when to push and pull, and I'm not as good at that as he is. He's a lot more diplomatic than me. I think I get a lot more stubborn on a lot of things and kind of get set in my head. And he usually will concede and let me have my way except for sometimes when he's like, no, it has to be this way. And when he puts his foot down, that's when I know, like, okay, he's putting his foot down here. I better just listen and let him have his way, because he never does that. So, it's been that, but honestly, together, because we wrote the film together. So after work, we would come home. One of us would have the script. I would stay up all night just working on the script, send it to him, have him read it, and then have him add his parts to it. And then he would take it, do his little edits, and then continue on the story. And so we just passed it back and forth between each other, probably about for maybe 3 to 6 months, which again, the script definitely needed more time to be worked on. But also, we didn't know anything about filmmaking. So there were certain scenes in the script that should be cut, and we did cut them. But at the time, you have no idea what's going to work and not work. That's something you learn in the editing stage, because you're retelling the story. Yeah, that's how it worked there. And then with co-directing, we tried to work together. He was more of the director because I just was so focused on the cinematography that it was hard for me to really watch the performance of the actors and know when to ask for an extra take. So I was just worried, like, oh my God, is my T-stop set correctly? What's the shutter speed? I don't know. And just trying to troubleshoot all of that. So yeah, we just kind of filled in wherever the other one couldn't, and then just have a natural language with each other.
No, that sounds fantastic, and it's great that you've got such a great working relationship together, because you can be best of friends and then it might not work professionally, but you guys sound like you've absolutely made it work.
Yeah.
So obviously it's taken 10 years. It's taken a good while. I'm sure it's not just about the title, even though you say so.
Yeah.
What are there any challenges that you've recently encountered while making it? Is there anything that might have slowed down progress, or is there anything like that going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, I would definitely say, like, during pre-production, we took about 6 months, and then we gave ourselves a hard deadline when to finish the film. And we met that deadline, and then we shot the film. That took about maybe 4 months to do principal, and we would shoot it on our weekends. So to get the actors casted and everything and come up for the weekends, and then that's when we would work. And that took about 3 months. That was about 30 days of shooting. And we were moving really well. Everything was going as planned. And it wasn't until we hit the edit that we hit that brick wall, because we didn't have anyone in mind to edit the film. And we always had wanted someone else to edit the film so they could relook at the story, see other elements that we aren't seeing, and basically recontextualize the whole thing and make it better. Because we had already so much bias. We already had scenes we loved. We had through the writing or through the acting or the lighting for me and camera work. So there's already so much set bias that we really wanted an outside opinion, and we sought that, and we got a few people, but it really didn't work out. One turned out to just be a very bad working relationship where they took about 2 years away from us on the edit, and they took about half of our funds for editing that, we didn't get anything back. And then another person did the work, and this was probably maybe like 4 years after that. They did the work when we could afford to get them. And then the edit, the movie was not what we hoped for. It was quite devastating. In fact, my co-director was almost ready to quit at that point, I think. Because before, he had done just like a quick edit of the film, just putting it all together real quick. And it was good enough. It was fun. We had the elements we liked. And all of the edits were either literally the same exact edit he finished, or worse versions of that edit. So then after a few years and trying to get money together to save up again, we realized we couldn't. So it was like, you know what? Let's just do it ourselves. And I would say probably over the past maybe 4 years it took for us to really get a good edit, and just kind of going over the film over and over constantly, and just understanding the characters and the scenes in completely new ways. I mean, it's interesting because the editing has really just taught me a lot about directing and really how to break down the scene and discover what the character's really trying to do and what they're asking for. Like I hadn't done it before, I wrote it and we directed it, but I don't think I had delved into it quite to that depth. And then in the edit, that's where that started to happen. And yeah, we finally got an edit where there are some rough spots in the film. I mean, obviously, we made it for like almost no money. So there's a lot of rough spots, but I think the edit's really good. And in fact, I was telling him because we'll edit a lot of times without sound. I like editing without temp music personally. And we got the edit so tight that now when we've been putting a score back into the film, it feels too fast. So we're having an issue, or I think we're having an issue where the film feels like it's cutting way too fast because before you know it, it's almost over, which is probably a good thing, honestly. It's probably a better thing to have than not.
No, that's absolutely fascinating, and it's inspiring to hear that you have stuck with it for so long, and especially as your co-director was going to sounded like they wanted to quit. I'm sure you did a lot of work there making sure that it carried on. Listen, it's been absolutely fantastic to talk to you. You've answered all my questions really well, and
thank you, Sam.
We can't wait to see the film, no matter what it's called. It's been fantastic to talk to you.
Yeah, you too as well. Thank you for those questions.
We hope you enjoyed watching today's interview. This video is part of the Filmmaker interview series from Pzaz. At Pzaz, we're building a production ecosystem that helps you to get things done. To try it for free, visit pzaz.io today. Thanks for watching.